This presentation will be an overview of the world's Christian population and where they're located and what proportion they are of the population of the planet and various continents, as well as looking at the remaining task, that of reaching the unreached people, where they're located, and we'll also look at some of the growth that has taken place in recent years. So as you can see from this very first slide, that 1/3 of the world's population are Christians. They're still unevangelized or unreached, almost a third, just under that. There's another 40% that are evangelized, but they are not Christian yet. That is to say that the gospel message has been preached to them. Then the other graph that is over here, pie chart, shows the proportion of foreign missionaries. As you can see, most of the missionaries that have gone out to the Christian people. 80% of our foreign missionaries are serving in countries and among people groups that are not only evangelized, but they are predominantly Christian. That is one of the sad facts of modern missions. The majority of our force spreading the gospel is working among Christian peoples. Only a small sliver, 2.5%, are working among the unevangelized people of the world. This is one of the main thrusts and motivating factors that I have, not only in this class, but also in my life, to challenge people and to encourage them to go and work among the remaining unreached peoples of the world. This particular slide shows us very vividly the proportion of Christians per continent over time. Back in the early 1900s, very few Christians were found in Asia and in Africa, but that number has now increased by 10 to 12-fold in the last 100 to 110 years. You can see the lighter blue that North America was the home for most Christians back at the turn of the century. Today that proportion has shrunk to less than 1/4. This table shows us at the country level the growth that has taken place over time. You can see that the U.S. in the 1900, 73 million Christians in the United States, and it was #1 among all the countries of the world. It's predicted it'll stay that way through 2050. But as far as the other countries on that first list are concerned, all of those in blue, only 3 appear in 2005, and the U.S. is the only one in 2050. Those list of top 10 is being replaced by countries from what we used to call the third world, but now referring to as the majority world. And so you see Brazil and China coming right up to the top in 2005 and predicted to stay in those places as well by 2050. The Democratic Republic of Congo is predicted to make the largest increase or move, along with India and Nigeria. But you can see that list in 2050 is made up of countries, none of which, except for the United States, had large numbers of Christians in 1900. So that is a good news for us. It shows that missions has been productive, that church planting movements have increased the number of Christians around the world. This chart divides the world into 2 different groups. First, the West, that's Europe and North America, and the majority world. We used to call that the developing world or the 2/3 world. Today we now call it the majority world because there are far more of them than there are us. And that is even the case when we talk about the number of Christians. The majority of the Christians in the world live outside of the West. And as we saw in the previous chart, most of those are in Africa and in Asia. 2 very rapidly growing countries in population, China and India, are figuring very, very high in that change that's taking place. And we'll see a little bit more about those two countries at the end of this presentation. What percent of the Christians are evangelical in faith? And this shows it per continent. Very few of the Christians in Europe are from evangelical churches. Most of them are part of state churches and the Catholic Church. Same is true in a lot of Latin America, but in North America, Asia, and Africa, more and more Christians are evangelicals. This next slide shows us what percentage of the world's evangelicals as a whole belong to each continent. So of all the evangelicals in the world, 1/3 of them are on the continent of Asia. And I guess that's to be expected because of the large population that is there, particularly when we're talking about India and China, but as well as the Philippines. In Africa as well is almost 1/3. Latin America, only 13%, but most of that is new because they have a Catholic heritage. And in North America now, less than 1/4 of the world's evangelicals are in North America. And in Europe, a very, very small proportion, only 4%. Turning now to the unreached people groups of the world, of the close to 10,000 unreached ethnic groups of the world, 4,100 of them are Muslim background believers. And this is the greatest challenge of the present missions, is to reach these Muslim people. They present a lot of different challenges that we'll look at here in just a few minutes. Hinduism the same way, and we're talking mostly there about India. 2,700 ethnic groups are still unreached there. And Buddhism, 1,000. Then among the animistic peoples or tribal peoples, most of them in Africa, but not only in Africa, 2,000 of them. This is the background or the religious beliefs of those who are still unreached. We can see now where these unreached peoples are located. The unreached ones are the ethnic groups, the dots in the red. And as we looked at the charts previously, we saw where Europe and the United States was the home for most Christians. But that has changed now, that this area that is predominantly unreached, this 1040 window as we call it, is now encapsulated or circled by Christian ethnic groups. So the chances of reaching these remaining unreached peoples is much greater today because they're not only being reached by missionaries from North America and from Europe, but also from Africa and other parts of Asia as well. When we look at the countries and their population that have the largest number of unevangelized people, see India, 344 million unevangelized people in that country. China, 262 million. And you can see Pakistan, Indonesia, Iran. We're talking about very, very large populations in some of these countries that are still unreached. It is both the burden and the challenge of those who are now preparing themselves to be church planting missionaries to target ethnic groups in these countries. This remaining task of the unreached peoples, these dots in the red, present us with some challenges. Many of the countries in North Africa and in Asia and in parts of the former Soviet Union, also down here in Malaysia and Indonesia, the governments will not allow people to register as church planting missionaries. So we have to come up with what is now being called creative access strategies, ways of getting into these countries to plant churches, but under some other umbrella, either development or doing business or something else, or maybe even reaching from the outside. But the fact of the matter is, some Asian countries will allow missionaries from other Asian countries to come in and share. So many of the missionaries that will be sent to these unreached peoples will be from other places than the United States and Europe. I want us to now look at a couple of countries, the two most populous countries on the planet, that of China and India. Heard a lot in recent years about the growth that's taken place among Christians in the country of China, and most of that's been done by Chinese people taking the gospel to their own people. And as you can see on the pie chart on the left, 82.6% of the ethnic groups or people groups of that country are still unreached. But most of those are the smaller groups. When you compare that to the pie chart on the right, you see that 86% of the total population of China are Christian today, and only about 14% are unreached. So a large number of ethnic groups, but they're the smaller ethnic groups. The larger ones have been reached already. But we're still talking about a sizable population there. The unreached peoples you see down in the chart below, the population of those unreached people groups is 178 million. Moving on to India, we see that the people groups, almost 90% of the people groups or ethnic groups of India are still unreached. And the largest percentage of the population by far, 93.1%, are still unreached. That comes to 1,160,000,000 people in India are in unreached people groups. A great challenge for us to work there. Again, we have to go in there with some creative access. Can't go into every place in China as a church planting missionary, but have to go in a registration that is something other than missions. Well, that's just been an overview. We'll, throughout this course now, begin to look at strategies of contextualized church planting among these peoples, and we'll be concentrating particularly upon the unreached peoples of the world.